10 Most Shocking Moments on Mr. Bean. Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Screeny. Mr. Bean ran for only 14 episodes, but that was more than enough to include a couple of pretty surprising and astonishing scenes. Some of them ended up being deleted or censored during international broadcasts because they were too much to handle. Let's take a look at the 10 most shocking moments on Mr. Bean. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more epic videos about your favorite movies and TV shows. Number 10. The Chair. One of the most iconic scenes in this series shows Mr. Bean driving in his Mini with an armchair strapped at the rooftop. This incident comes with an amazing backstory, which was included in one of the deleted scenes. Before squeezing everything he bought inside his car and placing the chair on the roof, our hero had to pull a couple of sneaky moves to become its new owner. An elderly couple already showed an interest in the chair before it caught Bean's eye, and they were ready to make a purchase. Mr. Bean first tried to make it look like the armchair was broken, but once that didn't work, he decided to bring out the big guns. The old lady was still sitting on the chair when he sneaked up to the control panel and tampered with the wires without her knowledge. Using the reclining feature turned into a total disaster since the lady ended up being sandwiched in the middle and completely traumatized in the process. She tried to get help, but no one could hear her scream thanks to the loud music on the intercom Mr. Bean had turned all the way up. Number 9. Art Class. The episode Back to School Mr. Bean was filled with dozens of hilarious sketches, but the art class wasn't fitting for the younger viewers. It was all fun and games while Mr. Bean was just painting a bowl of fruit, but things got a little bit tricky once it was replaced with a nude model. He was too embarrassed to keep on painting and eventually made a clay bra for the girl so he could go on without shame. Not much flash was shown in this scene, but it was still too racy for some. Disney and Nickelodeon removed some of the shots during their reruns of Mr. Bean, and if you ever watched this episode on one of these channels, the nude model was nowhere to be found. Number 8. The Library. Fitting several hilarious sketches into 20-odd minutes usually means some of the great ideas will end up on the chopping block. That's exactly what happens to the unaired sketch The Library. The fans of Mr. Bean who only watched the series during the original broadcast never got to see it, but it eventually resurfaced online and showed us everything we missed all those years ago. This particular adventure took our clumsy hero to a local library, filled with rare books that can only be handled with gloves. Mr. Bean is shown trying to copy one of the pages by using tracing paper, but his attempt quickly turned into a total train wreck. He ended up sneezing midway through and kept on shading the page before noticing the tracing paper slipped away. Mr. Bean did his best to correct the wrong, but screwed up the whole book when he tried to remove a single page he ruined. Despite never being included in the TV series, the writers of the film adaptation gave the nod to this sketch by including a scene where Mr. Bean sneezed on a priceless painting and completely destroyed it while trying to clean his mess. Number 7. The Laundry. Doing laundry is always a drag, and Mr. Bean hates it even more than the most of us since he has to deal with his bully every time he goes to wash his clothes. He finally decides to take revenge in this funny sketch by switching the man's liquid detergent with black coffee. At one point it seems like the bully could suspect he switched the liquids, so Bean decides to drink the detergent he previously poured in the coffee cup to throw him off. Before getting ready to leave the laundrette, Bean remembers he mixed up his trousers with a lady's skirt and climbs inside her dryer to get them back. The lady returns and switches on the machine before realizing there's someone inside. The sketch closes with Mr. Bean spinning at an incredible speed. The Nickelodeon executives probably feared their young viewers would want to try this at home and eventually censored both of the scenes. Number 6. The Swimming Pool. Physical comedy is the very foundation of Mr. Bean's charm, but sketches that relied on it too much proved to be pretty controversial. The swimming pool is one of the most notable examples since it was censored by both Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel for showing more nudity than their viewers can handle. Something like this comes to be expected when the whole segment takes place at a swimming pool, but some of the scenes were just too much. At one point, Mr. Bean is shown losing his swimming trunks and failing to retrieve them before a little girl fished them out of the water so she could play with them. After everyone leaves the pool, Bean tries to make it out of there completely naked without being spotted by anyone. It proves to be mission impossible since he wasn't able to avoid a group of female swimmers who were completely freaked out after seeing him bare. Number 5. The bus stop. We're used to seeing Mr. Bean in his classic mini, but he's no stranger to public transportation. One of his attempts of boarding a bus was captured in an unaired sketch called The Bus Stop. This hilarious segment shows Mr. Bean waiting for a bus and constantly failing to get on board. After missing the first one because it was too crowded, our hero tries to cut in line in front of everyone ahead of him, including a blind man and a lady with a baby. Once the bus arrives, the universe found a pretty funny way to punish Mr. Bean for using unethical methods to jump the line. The front door is nowhere to be found, and the passengers who were at the very ends of the line are allowed on the bus through the back door. By the time it's Mr. Bean's turn to get on board, the bus is already full, and he's the only one who's left stranded once again. Number 4. The Beach. The first episode of this sitcom introduced us to one of the most eccentric TV characters of all time, and it wouldn't be complete without the hilarious scene on the beach. This segment shows Mr. Bean reaching the beachfront in hope that he'll have a nice swim, but something goes wrong, as it always does. His visit to the beach seems to be quite spontaneous, and it turns out our hero didn't remember to put on his swimming trunks beforehand. Since there's nowhere to hide, Mr. Bean comes up with a brilliant idea to change without exposing himself to a man sitting on a nearby deck chair. He puts on his trunks over his trousers and goes to great lengths to somehow remove them without flashing his junk. Mr. Bean gave us an amazing life hack with this scene, but the guys at Disney didn't really appreciate it. This sketch was removed from broadcasts on the Disney Channel, probably because it shows a little too much flesh. Number 3. Turkey weight. The Christmas episodes of Mr. Bean feature so many epic scenes that some of the stuff they filmed didn't even make the final cut. The retail version of this episode contained one specific segment that wasn't aired during the original broadcast. It was a short sketch showing Mr. Bean taking part in a Guess the Weight competition. He comes up with a pretty smart way to cheat his way to victory and win the large turkey for free. Instead of simply throwing around random numbers like the rest of the contestants, Bean uses a scale and a calculator to correctly determine the weight of his future Christmas dinner. This was the only scene completely cut from the original broadcast of this Christmas episode, but a couple more scenes ended up being removed one way or the other. Some of the segments proved to be a bit too racy for Nickelodeon viewers and ended up being removed during the reruns on this TV station. The scenes of Mr. Bean trying to buy a turkey and having his girlfriend Irma remove it from his head are the ones that ended up being cut. Number 2. Locked Out. This sketch from the episode Mr. Bean in Room 426 proved to be so controversial that Nickelodeon never even broadcasted the episode during their reruns of the hit comedy series. The main reason is the fact that the lead character spent a significant amount of time walking around completely naked and doing the best he can to hide his private parts. At the very beginning, it doesn't seem like things are heading that way because Mr. Bean is shown trying to fight a cold and a high fever. At one point, he takes off all of his clothes because it's too hot in the room and tries to go back to sleep. It proves to be an impossible task because his neighbors are blasting loud music in the middle of the night. Mr. Bean tries to warn them to keep it down and leaves his room without realizing that he's naked. Once he tries to go back, the door closes and locks itself. Our hero spends the rest of the episode looking for a way to get back to his room without exposing himself to anyone else. So it's easy to see why Nickelodeon didn't feel comfortable with the idea of airing this episode. Number 1. Sleeping Trouble. We all struggled falling asleep every once in a while, but Mr. Bean took things to a whole new level in this extremely relatable sketch. He comes up with several creative ways to distract himself from noisy cats outside of his apartment. He tries watching a chess match on TV, taking a photo of a flock of sheep and counting them before using a calculator to get the right number and finally falling asleep. The controversial part of this sketch took place before all of these events at the very beginning of the clip. Mr. Bean was too lazy to get out of his bed and switch the lights off that he simply used a gun to shoot the light bulb, since he has enough of them anyway. The Disney Channel bosses weren't too happy about this scene and decided to edit it out due to its violent nature. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more amazing content, and don't forget to check out one of the other 2 videos on your screen.